Let's speak to the Scottish Secretary, David Mundell. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Given that you supported Remain, the majority of people in Scotland supported Remain, did you argue against this position in Cabinet?
What I've said previously is that the vote in Scotland was a vote for the United Kingdom to remain in the EU. It wasn't a vote for a separate Scotland. It wasn't about independence.
But that's not what I asked you. I asked you if you argued against this position that Theresa May outlined yesterday in Cabinet.
I haven't argued against that position because I believe that the democratic will of the people of the whole of the United Kingdom in the vote to leave the EU must be respected and followed through.
Aren't you a Scottish Secretary, though, there to defend the interests of the Scottish people in Cabinet?
No, just, Gary, as I would have respected a vote for independence if Scotland had voted for independence. People who voted for Remain have to accept the result and then work to get the best possible outcome. Now, I believe, and I've said it on this programme before, that I believe the best possible outcome for Scotland is having access to that single market, having no barriers or tariffs, but it's also clear that we cannot be a member of the single market, and I said this in the Scottish Parliament in the autumn, we cannot be a member of the single market if we're not a member of the EU.
And are you basing that on advice that you've taken?
Michael Russell accepts that. Michael Russell has accepted that Scotland cannot be, and the UK cannot be a member of the single market if it is not a member of the EU. And we have voted across the United Kingdom to leave the EU. And that's what we're going to do. But we're going to do it on the best possible terms to secure Scotland and the UK's economic interest. And that's the point on which we're in agreement fully with the Scottish Government.
Well, on that point,
paper, because what we've got to do is to protect Scotland's economic interest, and that's about getting the best possible access to that single market.
Well, you mentioned...
It's not about being a member.
Perhaps you'd let me ask a question. You mentioned the publication of that paper on December the 20th. Tell us what work you've done on that Scottish Government document since it was published.
We've done a line-by-line analysis of the paper, and we're going to have a full and comprehensive discussion of that paper tomorrow. We're going to have a detailed discussion between myself, Michael Russell and Derek Mackay next week on the constitutional issues that are raised in that paper.
What conclusion have you reached?
The conclusion that we've reached is that there are a whole range of areas in which the Scottish Government, UK Government, are actually on common ground. And many of those were actually mentioned yesterday by Theresa May in her speech. Workers' rights, protecting the rights of EU citizens that are already here, ensuring that we have common processes for dealing with criminal justice issues. We're on common ground on a whole range of issues. Where we're not on common ground, and I don't think anybody listening to this programme would expect to be, is on the ideological issue of whether Scotland should somehow be separate from the rest of the UK. We are not in agreement with the Scottish Government on that, and at the moment I have not seen evidence which would persuade me that there is a need for a Scotland-specific solution in relation either to market access or in relation to issues around migration.
Theresa May talked about the repatriation of powers and strengthening the union yesterday and making sure that the right powers were passed to the devolved administrations. What are the right powers that will be devolved?
I want to ensure that we have engagement on that issue. All the major changes, well, in fact, from its instigation following the Constitutional Convention of the Scottish Parliament, there's always been engagement about the powers that rest with the Scottish Parliament rest at Westminster. So I want that engagement to be full. I've already begun.
Give us an idea of which powers you're thinking about.
Discussion. Well, obviously, there are powers that I think relate, for example, to criminal justice. I think it's very clear that those powers are powers that would return to Holyrood. There are issues around how our single market market within the UK operates, and we need to make sure that it operates effectively, so that there are issues which are probably best regulated across the whole of the UK, whether by the powers
Fishing, agriculture?
Well, fishing and agriculture, significant powers are already exercised at Holyrood. There'll be no change.
The significant powers are exercised by Brussels, so will those powers be devolved to Holyrood?
What we want to do is engage with the Scottish Government, with interests like the Scottish Fishermen's Federation, the Scottish NFU. They've got strong views on these issues, and it's very, very important that they're taken into account. And that's a process I want to begin. But what's clear is that this will be, and I said this in the autumn, this will be a significant change for the Scottish Parliament, because devolution to Scotland and other parts of the United Kingdom was predicated on membership of the EU. We won't be in the EU, and therefore that will bring change with it.
You say you've done a line-by-line analysis of the Scottish Government's paper that was released in December. You say there's no evidence for a separate deal as you see it for Scotland, so you've ruled that out. We've got David Davis, your colleague, saying that the UK will leave the EU even if Parliament votes down the final deal. It sounds as though you're not really that interested in other people's positions. The government has decided on the way forward, and it's going to railroad through whatever happens.
I don't agree at all with that analysis. I've said in my previous remarks that I'm open to persuasion in relation to whether there should be a separate Scottish arrangement.
You said there's no evidence for a separate deal.
Well, I've said there is no evidence, but if there is evidence brought forward, there's a continuing discussion and dialogue, then I'm open to receive that. I don't have a closed mind. I'm not coming from this, and the UK government isn't coming from this from an ideological position that we want that we have a fixed viewpoint. We're proceeding on the basis of evidence, on the basis of the best way in order to secure the deal. And we've set out a detailed plan. People asked us for a plan. We've set out a detailed plan. But we've also, as the Prime Minister did yesterday, reaffirmed her commitment to engage with the Scottish Government. Now, that doesn't always mean we will agree. But what happened yesterday is the Prime Minister spoke. I spoke to the Deputy First Minister on Monday. I met with Michael Russell last week. I'm meeting Michael Russell if he's well, and I hope he is recovered. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with Derek Mackay and Michael Russell next week. We are engaging. It doesn't mean that we will agree on everything.
Nicola Sturgeon says
there is a whole range of issues. Sorry, just to finish this point, because it is important, Gary. There are a whole range of issues in which we are actually in agreement.
Nicola Sturgeon says she wants Scots to have a choice if there's no compromise as she sees it. Will Scotland have the power to hold a referendum if that's what the Parliament chooses?
I've said before, and it remains the position, of course there could be another independence referendum.
So Westminster wouldn't stand in the way?
The issue is whether there should be, and I'm going to continue to argue, as my colleagues will in Scotland, that there shouldn't be another independence referendum.
But I'm asking you specifically, so you're saying that Westminster wouldn't stand in the way of this?
What I've set out before is that we've had a referendum before. There's a process for having a referendum. That is a process issue. The Scottish Government...
Indeed, and it needs Westminster consent. That's what I'm asking you.
The Scottish Government's consultation acknowledged that there would have to be a change in legislation at Westminster.
And you would be supportive of that?
Westminster Agreement. What I'm saying is that there is a process for doing that. I'm not supportive of there being another referendum, and I want to continue to argue that there shouldn't be. I think it's creating very much an unnecessary uncertainty in Scotland. I think the overwhelming majority of people in Scotland, even people who support independence, believe it is a divisive issue that should be taken off the table. The First Minister has the opportunity still to do that, and I urge her to do it.
Scottish Secretary David Mundell, we're grateful for your time this morning. Thank you very much.